The Road to Revolution, now on BBC4 in days that shook the world.
Revolution creates seismic shifts in power and ideology. At the end of the 20th century, two revolutions set the destiny of the 21st. Romania, which defined the collapse of Soviet communism in Europe, and Iran, which heralded the rebirth of Islam as a potent force for political change. Based on eyewitness accounts, this is a dramatized reconstruction of these events as they happened, on 2 days that shook the world. It is December 1989. In Paris, the world-renowned playwright Samuel Beckett has died. In America, President George Bush has ordered the US Marines to invade Panama. And in Eastern Europe, it is 7 weeks since the fall of the Berlin Wall. Revolution has swept through Czechoslovakia, Bulgaria, and Hungary. Romania is the last remaining communist state, but it too is on the brink of revolution. It is Christmas Day, 1989. For a quarter of a century, Romania has been in the iron grip of an oppressive communist regime. For the last week, the country has witnessed a violent wave of uprisings against its dictatorial leader, Nicolae Ceausescu. Like many Romanians who've spent all their lives under communist rule, Captain Ionel Boero of the Romanian paratroop regiment has never celebrated Christmas before. In Bucharest, Boero's wife is keen to get in touch, as the country suddenly seems to be on the verge of civil war.
Alo, bună dimineața. Putem vorbi cu capitanul Boero, vă rog?
He wishes he could be with his family, but as all military personnel are on standby, he's not allowed to contact them. For 3 days, fierce fighting has engulfed several towns, and President Ceausescu and his wife, Elena, appear to have fled the capital, Bucharest. What Boero doesn't know is that today his own fate will be closely bound with that of his president. In a suburb of Bucharest, television director George Militaru boosts morale by bringing his team an unusual breakfast, coffee, freshly looted from Communist Party stores. The station has always been used by the communist government to transmit its own propaganda. From the start of the Troubles, the news service has declared the uprisings as the work of foreign agitators. Militaru has no choice in this. It is simply his job to report events in this way. The station is therefore an obvious target for attack. Secretly, Militaru is not sure how much longer they can hold out, but pretends it's business as usual. Contrary to rumor, the Ceausescus have not fled Romania. They are being secretly held in a military barracks 50 kilometers from Bucharest.
Bună dimineața, tоварищи президенты.
Whether they are under arrest or are there for their own protection is unclear.
Le pot mânca.
Asta au mâncat soldații români din ordinea dumneavoastră.
For the third day in a row, they refuse the standard army rations they were responsible for introducing. Elena is worried about the strain recent events have put on Nicolae's failing health.
Fire toilet!
Nicolae suffers from diabetes and has bladder problems. The toilet facilities are basic. It is in stark contrast to the opulence they have enjoyed for the past 24 years. The Ceausescus are rumored to have millions stashed in Swiss banks. They have requisitioned royal palaces and luxury villas all around the country, which they have decorated in the style of Versailles. Most they have never even spent the night in. Their love of antiquity is in contrast to their destruction of historic buildings to satisfy Nicolae's vision of social engineering. A quarter of Bucharest is razed to the ground to make way for Soviet-style high-rises. through decades of social and economic mismanagement, they have ruined Romania. Now, they are about to pay the price for their greed and their vanity. With all of Romania in chaos, Captain Boeru has no idea what his duties will be today. A senior officer appears in the mess.
Am primit ordin dal general Stanculescu.
He asks for 8 men to volunteer for a special mission. He tells them that it will be for their families and for their future. Boeru feels duty-bound to sign up. At Târgoviște barracks, the Ceausescus are taken from their room. The night before, the barracks were shot at, and the presence of the Ceausescus is making the guards nervous. They are being hidden in an armoured car for their protection, although they are confident they are to be flown to freedom. Nicolae and Elena have always believed they are invincible and have worked hard to create a cult of personality around themselves. Influenced by the dictatorial regimes of Stalin and Chairman Mao, the Ceausescus have set about creating a country that worships them. They have devised a history of themselves in which Romania is grateful for their charismatic leadership. Nicolae confers on himself the title Genius of the Carpathians and the Great Conducatore, whilst the barely literate Elena becomes the great scientist, engineer, and academician. The esteem in which they hold themselves is in contrast to the way they treat their people. There is mass poverty, and yet Romanian women are forced to have 5 children as a patriotic duty. Contraception is banned, HIV is rife, and the orphanages are overcrowded. People are hungry, but live in fear of Ceausescu's notoriously brutal secret police force, the Securitate, who are rumoured to have infiltrated every walk of life. It is a peaceful protest in the provincial city of Timișoara that provides the touch paper for revolution. Religion is barely tolerated by the state, and when much-loved local priest Laszlo Tokes is threatened with eviction for his outspoken political views, the town turns out to support him. The army and Securitate open fire on the unarmed crowd.
De la magazin spre casă, trupele de securitate au tras în noi fără să ne someze.
Under the command of General Victor Stanculescu, government security forces cause over 90 deaths in Timișoara. 2 days after the initial protests on the 18th of December, General Stanculescu is still ordering the shooting of those involved in the demonstrations. As Deputy Defense Minister, Stanculescu has won the trust of the Ceausescus. Nicolae himself ordered the general to take control of the situation in Timișoara, knowing that he would do so with efficiency and brutality. But what now cannot be done is to halt the rumors of genocide that follow in the wake of the massacre and which spread uncontrollably across Romania. On the 21st of December, and in direct response to the bloodshed in Timișoara, President Ceausescu prepares to make his first public appearance since the massacre. Ceausescu plans a morale-boosting rally of over 100,000 people in central Bucharest. He is confident that this will put an end to the crisis. His address will be broadcast across Romania from the balcony of the Central Committee building.
Camera 1.
George Militaru has been directing Ceausescu's live speeches and TV appearances for nearly 10 years, and he knows that one wrong shot can see him sacked. He checks that the cameraman can find the planted audience members. Should Ceausescu stutter or have a facial tic, a shot of the enthusiastic crowd can immediately be inserted. As they set out for the balcony, neither Elena or Nicolae realize the extent to which Romania has changed. At exactly 12:31, Ceausescu begins his speech.
Dragi tovarăși și prieteni, cetățeni ai capitalei României socialiste.
It is the usual mix of communist dogma and nationalist sentiment. The specially selected members of the audience applaud dutifully.
Doresc în primul rând să vă adresez.
It was on this same balcony in 1968 that Ceausescu had his finest hour. Romania had already negotiated limited freedoms from Soviet control in the 1950s, and as Soviet tanks rolled into Czechoslovakia in 1968, Ceausescu gave a rousing speech condemning Moscow for threatening peace in Europe.
Czechoslovakia constituie o mare greșeală și o primejdie gravă pentru pacea în Europa, pentru soarta socialismului în lume.
As a result, the good communist becomes a recognizable world statesman, is given an honorary knighthood by the Queen, and received in the White House by 2 presidents. Since then, he feels himself to be untouchable. Ceausescu has been speaking to the crowd for 8 minutes, when the mood changes. The chant of Timișoara is heard. No one has ever dared to publicly challenge Ceausescu before. He feels puzzled and anxious, and all of Romania can see it. In the TV gallery, a lifetime of repression has made its mark, and George Militaru doesn't need to be told. He immediately cuts the live broadcast. The pictures vanish from the screen, but in the studio someone keeps recording the sound from the balcony.
Așezați-vă liniștiți!
Liniște!
Stai.
Ce ai făcut? Stați liniștiți!
The damage has been done. The image of a frail, confused old man is the catalyst to bring thousands of Romanians onto the street. Even the army start to question if he is worth defending. Minutes later, order is restored, and the picture returns. Ceausescu broadcasts a list of concessions.
Ianuarie să majorăm în cursul anului viitor.
But it's too late. Already thousands of people are leaving the square and regrouping in the back streets. The communist symbol, which has been in the center of the Romanian flag for almost half a century, is gone in half a minute. Evolution has started, televised for all to see. General Stanculescu's worst fears have been realized. His actions have made martyrs of the victims of Timișoara and have escalated the unrest. He's now in the spotlight, in danger both from the Ceausescus and the crowd. In a country where deception is common currency, and not even its leaders are who they seem, General Stanculescu forms a bizarre plan to ensure his own survival. In the heat of the moment, he contrives a broken leg, hoping this will allow him to take a back seat during the unfolding events. It's the night following his disastrous speech, and Ceausescu is unable to sleep as the crowds take to the streets.
Domnul, pe Stănculescu.
They cannot contact Stănculescu, and the army appear unwilling to follow orders to crush the protesters. Nicolae and Elena are both worried. Next morning, the 22nd of December, the square is still packed with protesters hemmed in by troops and the Securitate forces defending the Central Committee building. The Ceausescus are still inside. Shortly after 11, there is a perceptible change of mood. It is apparent that the army is no longer on the side of the government. A party atmosphere develops in the crowd as people feel the euphoria of revolutionary spirit. It is a turning point in the revolution. At noon, the demonstrators storm the Central Committee building. They meet little resistance. Stănculescu appears and takes advantage of the Ceausescu's rising panic. He tells them they must escape the building, knowing that if they flee, they will appear guilty. He calls for a helicopter, but does not go with them, using his leg as an excuse. The crowd breaks into the lower floors of the building as the Ceausescus try to make it to the helipad. As they run across the roof, they are spotted by the jubilant protesters. The overloaded helicopter struggles to take off. Aboard are Ceausescu, Elena, 2 advisors, 2 bodyguards, and the 3-man crew. The plan is to make for one of their country palaces to try to regroup and rally support. With the Ceausescus gone, the crowd turns its attention to the television studio, keen to use the power of TV to spread word of the growing revolution. Militaru and his staff are powerless as the crowd forces its way in. Confusion reigns as the protesters negotiate their way on air.
Tovarăși, ascultați-mă! Sunteți mulți tovarăși care lucrați în televiziune. Sunteți nevinovați! Să trecem la fapte, la treabă, mai bine zis. Avem nevoie...
Liniște puțin! Liniște puțin! Liniște puțin! Atențiune, vă rog! Peste 5 secunde intrăm în emisie. 5... Atenție, controlul! 3...
At 1 o'clock, the dissident poet and national hero, Mircea Dinescu, goes on air. News of the revolution reaches even the most rural parts of Romania, as well as the outside world.
Dictatorul a fugit!
Later, it is dubbed history's TV revolution.
Victorios! Am învins! Am învins! Am învins!
As Bucharest is enveloped in chaos, the Ceausescu's escape is becoming farcical. The helicopter pilot invents technical problems and dumps his passengers on a deserted roadside. A local doctor driving to work spots the desperate couple and their bodyguard trying to flag down a ride. It is Elena, not Nicolae, who stops him at gunpoint.
Nu mi faci nimic!
They're driven in the direction of Târgoviște. In Bucharest, work is underway to form a new government. In an office deep in the Central Committee building, self-elected politicians calling themselves the National Salvation Front are trying to get hold of Stănculescu on the phone to secure the backing of the army in order to restore calm. But Stănculescu isn't answering until he knows what has happened to the Ceausescus. For the Ceausescus, though, their escape is over. After commandeering a second car, they are identified and taken to Târgoviște's army barracks. Colonel Andrei Kemenic is the officer in charge at Târgoviște. He is worried that the presence of the Ceausescus makes the barracks a target for Securitate snipers. In Bucharest, Stănculescu hears the news of their arrest on the radio. He is now taking calls. Oddly, no one sees his plaster cast again. Across Romania, people are still unsure as to the whereabouts of their leaders. Fierce street battles erupt between the army, now supporting the revolution, and Securitate snipers loyal to the Ceausescus. The army and the people succeed in rounding up Securitate agents, who are then interrogated and executed. A counter-revolution begins to look less likely. On Christmas Eve, the National Salvation Front meets with General Stănculescu in Bucharest to decide the fate of the Ceausescus. They fear the Ceausescus may remain a rallying point for counter-revolutionary forces. In a stormy 3-hour meeting, President-to-be Ion Iliescu argues for a civil trial weeks later, while General Stănculescu argues for an immediate military trial. He eventually gets his way. He has his own ideas about what sort of justice the Ceausescus deserve. On Christmas Day, 5 helicopters land at Târgoviște barracks. General Stănculescu assembles all the personnel who are to conduct the military trial, including Captain Boero and his troopers. Stănculescu and Boero meet with Colonel Kemenic to be shown round the barracks. The general points to a wall along one side. This, he tells them, is where the execution will take place. Kemenic is shocked as he realizes that the verdict is a foregone conclusion. Boero finally understands the significance of his mission as Stănculescu orders him to lead the firing squad. The Ceausescus are taken out of the armored car they have been hidden in. They've heard the helicopters and assume they'll be flown to safety. Instead, they are escorted to the schoolroom. Inside, a grim piece of theatre is played out. The Ceausescus are given a medical examination to see if they are healthy enough to stand trial. Nikolai's blood pressure is very high. Eleanor refuses to be examined, but keeps hold of the insulin delivered earlier that morning for her husband. Captain Boero picks 3 soldiers to stand alongside him in the firing squad.
Am nevoie de 3 oameni. Sunteți cu mine.
Eu.
He cannot afford to choose anyone who might have second thoughts about executing the people who were, until 3 days ago, the supreme rulers of Romania. At 1 o'clock, the court is convened. It's the last throw of the dice for the Ceausescus, but they aren't playing the game. Nikolai refuses to recognize the legitimacy of the court and treats the proceedings with contempt.
Nu sunt inculpat președintele României și a reprezentanților clasei muncitoare.
The principal charges laid before them are genocide in Timișoara and theft of the nation's assets whilst forcing the people to live in poverty. Eleanor is outraged when the court strips her of all her academic titles. When asked to explain why he fled the Central Committee building, Ceausescu looks pointedly at the assembled witnesses. He begins to realize the devious role Stănculescu has played in their downfall. The court orders a recess to consider its verdict. The lives of Romania's leaders hang in the balance. Captain Buero's firing squad waits nervously to see if they'll be needed. The judgment on the Ceausescu's 25 years in power takes only 55 minutes.
Tribunalul, în numele legii și Ceaușescu Nicolae și Ceaușescu Elena, la pedeapsa capitală și confiscarea totală a averii
și poporul român liber, nu cu trădători.
For the first time, it dawns on them that they may not survive. In a room thick with treachery, the Ceausescus are touchingly loyal to each other, their partnership unbreakable to the bitter end.
Dacă vreți să ne omorâți, ne omorâți pe amândoi. Împreună.
Nu.
Împreună. Nu, dragă, nu. Mergem împreună.
Legea așa.
Nu, dă dreptul să fim împreună. Împreună. Ce vrei să faci? Ce asta? Ce asta? Nu le cați. Nu puneți mâna. Nu le cați. Nu băieți. Nu ne
să mă prezint cum vreau.
Nu băiat. Nu e
Stați și de acolo.
Nu e voie să ne legați. Nu, ne legați. Ne legați. E rușine. E rușine. M-am crescut. La o mână. Dați la un loc, mă. Ce e asta? Rupeți mâna. Dați-mi drumul la mână. Dați-mi drumul.
Nu ne minte nimeni.
Ce vă minte, mă?
Nu vă minte nimeni.
Noi suntem aici așa, pe cine?
They are to be shot immediately, despite Romanian law of the time forbidding execution within 10 days of a death sentence. Captain Buero has been told to wait for Stanculescu's death sentence. But when Ceausescu emerges, Buero's feelings get the better of him.
Oh!
Nu mai trage nimeni.
Inspection of the walls reveals over 100 rounds are fired at the elderly couple. The firing squad has been told not to aim for Nikolai's face, so they can both verify his death and use it as propaganda. Eleanor is granted no such dignity. On Christmas night, the TV revolution delivers its gruesome climax. Viewers can see the graphic images of the Ceausescu's dead bodies. Romanians all around the country cautiously celebrate. Many are still in shock. The Ceausescus are buried in unmarked graves in the Ghencea Cemetery in Bucharest. Nicolae is the only head of state to lose his life during the purge of communism from Eastern Europe.
Până n-au murit unii, n-am scăpat. Nu mai deschide dată să face curent.
6 months later, the first democratic elections in 25 years are won by the National Salvation Front, led by Ion Iliescu. He appoints General Stanculescu as defense minister, and the Securitate is reinstated. Opposition politicians, newspapers, and public demonstrations are all violently crushed. It is the 15th of January 1979.